Good evening, everyone. My name is Shannon Davis. I'm the marketing manager for Central Peninsula Hospital. I would like to take a moment to recognize our sponsor, Central Peninsula Health Foundation. Their sponsorship supplements dinner tickets so we can keep them affordable for all of you. I'd also like to recognize our hospital dietary staff who supplied your dinner tonight. I'm always amazed at the amazing job they do. Now, for the reason that you're all here tonight, I am very happy to introduce, although I know that a lot of you do already know him, Mr. Dr. Kim. He is our cornerstone physician at Central Peninsula Gastroenterology. Dr. Kim grew up in Muscatine, Iowa, and completed both his undergraduate, graduate, and medical degrees at the University of Iowa. He went on to complete his internal medicine residency at LAC Harbor UCLA Medical Center and a gastroenterology fellowship at UCLA Center for Health Sciences. His connection to Alaska began in 2007 during a memorable hunting and fishing trip with his son. That experience eventually led him to move to the Kenai Peninsula and establish a practice in 2018. And in January 2024, Dr. Kim joined Central Peninsula Hospital, bringing his expertise in digestive health to our community. Outside of medicine, Dr. Kim is an avid outdoorsman, embracing everything from skiing and cycling to fishing and racing at Twin Cities Raceway. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kim.
Okay, when she said Muscatine, Iowa, I saw a couple of you clapping. I knew there were Midwesterners here because I got here at 5:05 and there were people already here. So there must be people from Minnesota, and I'm very humbled that all of you are here, and I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to commend you because if you're here, that means you bought your tickets at least 2 weeks ago because we've been sold out for a week and a half, and I get a chance to see what it's like to feel like Taylor Swift being sold out. Okay, so
Much like a real Bill.
what's that?
You don't look much like.
See, this is my friend Jeff Bellamini. He said I don't look like Taylor Swift. He is so racist, isn't he? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, so this is weight management. So Americans spend an extraordinary amount of money on weight loss, dieting, and so forth. So how much do we spend? $42 billion a year, and that is climbing, okay? This is pre-medications. There's a zone diet, Atkins diet, keto diet, caveman. You see all these South Beach, grapefruit, just a million different diets. And you know, some of my patients will find a thing, they'll say, well, if I eat lean hamburger and asparagus, I lost 40 pounds, I'm gonna write a book. I said, well, there are over 40,000 books on Amazon on dieting and weight loss. So I wrote it up here, I don't know if all of you can see it. And I wrote up here, insulin versus glucagon. And many things in the body, it's what we call homeostasis. We have things that do opposite things that keep us in balance. So the arteries take the blood to the tissues, the veins bring it back. We have what we call a sympathetic nervous system, which is epinephrine, which is the fight or flight, so it raises your heart rate, raises your blood pressure, dilates your pupils, gets you ready to fight. The opposite of that is what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, and what that does is that slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, calms you down, allows you to digest food, all these things. So there are a lot of things in the body that are opposites. And insulin and glucagon are exact opposites. So what does insulin do? I'm sure you all have heard of insulin. Insulin drives sugar into the cells. It drives it into the liver, it drives it into the muscle. Insulin makes you hungry because when you secrete insulin, you become hungry. Insulin tells your body, take the sugar and manufacture more body fat, okay? Insulin also speeds up your gut. Insulin also raises your immune system. It's kind of pro-inflammatory, okay? Glucagon is just the opposite. It's what would happen when your sugar is low. So it tells the liver and muscle, stop taking any more sugar, okay? It tells the fat cells, hey, I want you to break down and make more glucose from fat. So it tells your fat to break down. It takes away your appetite. It's anti-inflammatory, and it slows the gut. Now, I'm not going to ask, I see a lot of hospital employees here, so this is for the non-hospital people here. How many of you know someone or know of someone who takes insulin? Okay, almost all of you, okay? How many of you know someone or know of someone who takes glucagon? Okay, so I would argue that almost all of you know someone who's taking glucagon. It's not called glucagon, it's called GLP-1, okay? So it's Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, Zepbound, a million of them. I mean, not a million of them, but all these things you see on TV, it's basically glucagon. In fact, they always say GLP-1RA. GLP means glucagon-like peptide, all right? So these people, they used to take insulin. Now we're taking just the opposite. So now you know. So that is kind of basically the foundation of what we're going to talk about today. So what happened, okay? Well, the food pyramid came out in 1992. You guys remember that, right? The food pyramid. And all of a sudden, eggs were bad, beef is bad, pork is bad, butter, it's really bad. All right, and so remember, like egg industry used to have eggs. It's what's good for you. It's for breakfast. They had to really push it because everybody thought eggs were bad. You know, all my friends from Iowa, they're panicking because they're cattle farmers and they're pork, they're hog farmers, and they're going, what's happening here? You know, everybody's going to stop eating this stuff. In fact, you remember the Sam Elliott for beef? Remember, he was like, beef, it's what's for dinner, right? Trying to get people to buy more beef. And then pork, do you remember what the pork line was? The other white meat, very good, right? So they're trying to throw beef under the bus, saying, don't eat beef, eat pork, we're the other white meat, right? So they were competing to try to do a drastically diminishing, popularity of their foods. So foods that were considered to be good and healthy, right? Here we go. Bread, pasta, potatoes, rice, cereals, right? We were told that carbs are good. Stop eating so much red meat, okay? Stop eating so much beef. Carbs are good. So we were advised to eat a high carbohydrate, low fat diet. And it wasn't just the food pyramid. It was all the organizations bought off on it. American Heart Association, American Diabetes. Everybody said, that's a good thing. We're all jumping on board, okay? So what happened since this all came about, all right? Well, in the 1970s, the average BMI was 24. Now, if you guys see TV shows from the 60s and 70s, right? And you see, like newsreels from the 60s and 70s, pretty much everyone's thin, right? Back, 50 years ago. What's that? Currently, the average BMI is 30, which is obese. 74% of American adults are classified as overweight or obese. And 43% of Americans are obese with a BMI over 30, okay? So the food pyramid kind of got all of us. We thought we were doing what was healthy, and this is what happened. So there are three basic food groups. First is protein. And protein, as you know, are the building blocks for the body to make muscle, skin, collagen. And I put on here, cannot be used for energy, but that's not true. So if you are starving to death, if you're in a prisoner of war camp, you can break muscle down for sugar, but that's only in desperate circumstances. And it's like the frame, body, and engine of a car, and you're going to see this car theme come up again. And you have to have if you are a vegetarian, you have to make sure that your diet includes all of the 10 or now I think 11 essential amino acids. Carbohydrates. They are the primary energy source for the body. And I want you to think of carbohydrates as like 100 octane premium gas. It's a very efficient way to make quick energy, ATP, okay? Now, can anyone name this carb? It's a Dairy Queen peanut butter parfait. It's my carb of choice. And when you ask the question, is there anything better than a Dairy Queen peanut butter parfait, the answer for me is no. That's right. That's exactly right. All right. So the third are fats. Now, fats are used both for energy and in manufacturing things like hormones. Energy production is via what we call oxidation, which is much less efficient than carbohydrates at making energy. And this is why when you saw people on the Atkins diet eating bacon and pork rinds all day, and they said, I'm still losing weight. It's because fat is an inefficient way to make glucose or sugar, right? I'm not saying any of you should eat an Atkins diet. In fact, I don't think people should eat an Atkins diet. People lost the weight the quickest with an Atkins diet, and not shockingly, they regained their weight the fastest with an Atkins diet. But that's how it works. So carbs are like 100 octane premium gas, and fats are like diesel fuel, okay? Carbs are a flamethrower, and fats are a slow-burning log, okay? So kind of keep that in mind. Now, the original animal model that came out very early, almost 50 years ago, that said dietary cholesterol results in high blood cholesterol, okay? The animal model that used to conclude that was a rabbit, okay? Now, all of you remember Bugs Bunny, right? And he held a thing in his hand and it said, what's up, Doc? What was that he had in his hand? It wasn't a Polish sausage. It wasn't a bratwurst. It was a carrots, because rabbits eat carrots. Rabbits don't eat butter. They don't eat red meat. So it's an artificial situation. And in rabbits, if you give them dietary cholesterol, it results in serum cholesterol. But that's rabbit. We're not rabbits, right? But that was used to conclude that we should stop eating dietary cholesterol because it's going to raise our cholesterol. Okay. So carbohydrates are, as you know, pasta, bread, rice, potatoes, Cokes, pies, sugar drinks, candy, what my patients always refer to as the good stuff. And I agree with them. It is the good stuff, right? Now, I apologize. It's not dietary, but did you notice something missing from your dinner tonight? No starch, right? So I take the full blame for that, okay? That's not dietary. But it was just a point that you can actually eat dinner without bread, right? You can eat dinner without potatoes, right? And the reason why, bread is such a fundamental part of so many of our existences. I mean, when we say our Lord's Prayer, we don't say, give us this day our daily lean chicken breast, right? We say our daily bread. And bread allowed people 3,000, 4,000 years ago to feed thousands of people. And that's why we had farming, right? We were healthier pre-farming, like 9,000 years ago when we were hunter-gatherers. We didn't live very long, but farming, bread is such an important part of how we live our life. So what happens with carbs? So carbs are quickly broken down into glucose and other monosaccharides. 25% is sent to the liver and 75% is into the muscle and is stored as a starch called glycogen. A 180-pound man can store about 1,600 calories of glycogen, which is equivalent to about 2 hours of vigorous exercise. So this is why marathoners, professional athletes, have to replenish their glycogen and glucose while they're running. Like triathletes, they're doing GU, Gatorade, they're powering it, just powering Gatorade because they burn through more than 1,600 calories during a given day. Now, back in California at my old facility, there was a physician's therapy assistant who was a friend, and I'm walking through the lobby, and he's about my height, but about 100 pounds heavier, okay? And he's drinking a Gatorade. And I looked at him, I said, bro, why are you drinking Gatorade? And he goes, hey, you're a Lakers fan. LeBron James drinks Gatorade. This is literally what he said, right? And I think a lot of people see Gatorade and they see Jason Tatum and LeBron James and Caitlin Clark, for all you Iowans here, the Gatorade, absolutely, right? So she's, and they think, wow, if I drink Gatorade, it's going to make me more athletic. I'm going to be a sports guy. I'm going to drink Gatorade. I just said, all right, well, LeBron probably woke up at 6:30 this morning and he did Pilates and yoga for an hour and a half, and then he'll do an hour of strength training, and then he'll do an hour of zone 2 cardio. He'll take a light lunch, take a nap. He'll do a 2-hour shoot around, and then he's going to play 4 hours of basketball. And I looked at him and I said, which one of those 5 things are you planning on doing today? And he said, none. I said, you can't drink Gatorade, right? You can't. I said, you're not playing 4 hours of basketball, right? And so this is just a trick question. So marathoners have to do this Gatorade and Goo. Do you know how many calories it takes to run a marathon? Anyone know? About 2,800 calories. So not as much as you would think, right? Right? So what happens with carbs? So here's the problem is however many carbs, how much gasoline you put in your car on any given day, you've got to use it that day, okay? Because any unused gasoline that is left over at the end of the day will be converted into diesel fuel, okay? So you got to use it or lose, you don't lose it, you use it or you gain fat, all right? So my 30-minute Peloton workout this morning was 273 active calories and 340 total calories, okay? An extra 22 pounds of body fat is approximately 75,000 calories. This is why people say, when my patients go, I hardly eat a thing and I can't lose weight. A lot of doctors go, yeah, right. I say, I totally believe you. And I've even done calorie counts comparing my calorie intake to that patient's intake, and I'm double what they're taking in. So they really don't take in that many calories. They just don't burn the calories, or they take the wrong calories. If you put gasoline in your tank, you got to use it, because otherwise you're going to make more diesel fuel. And so you look at, like 2,800 calories, 2,800 calories for a marathon. Well, you got to run like 27 marathons to lose 22 pounds of fat. That's why it's not easy to lose weight, because fat is very energy rich. We were designed to live through starvation by having body fat. And, so what I tell people is think of yourself as a Ford F-150 that has a 6-gallon gas tank, but an unlimited capacity diesel reserve tank, okay? It can get as big as you want, okay? So, because body fat is energy ready to use later. So one of my patients like 25 years ago, I'll never forget it, and he has Crohn's disease, and a lot of Crohn's people are really thin. He wasn't. He was 100 pounds heavier than me, right? And so I gave him a hard time. I said, hey, you really need to lose weight. You're going to have a heart attack. You're going to have a stroke. You're going to get diabetes. We really need to lose weight. So he said, all right. And so a lot of you who are my patients know that I kid around with my patients and they joke with me. So he looked at me. He goes, all right, hear me out. Let's say we both got cancer today and we couldn't stop eating today, okay? You're not going to go more than 4 to 5 weeks. Look at me. I got a year and a half, right? And that was so poignant that he said that. But if you think of the Ford F-150 6-gallon gas tank with an unlimited reserve diesel fuel tank, you can imagine a wife who cares about her husband. And if this is his truck, she'd say, dear, I know you like running that premium gas and because the truck is faster and it just is really peppy, but you're not using all the gas you put in that truck every day. And I'm afraid that if your diesel reserve tank got any bigger, I don't think your car is going to fit in the garage. Okay? Well, the human equivalent is the wife saying, you know, dear, if you keep eating 6 donuts every morning, you know, I'm afraid that we're going to have to go to Beeman's or Fred Meyer and get you an even bigger pair of jeans. Okay? It's the same thing. It's reserve energy ready to use in the future. So any unused remaining glycogen is converted to fat for the most part. And it first goes to subcutaneous fat, which is fat below your skin. And then it goes to visceral fat, which is the dangerous fat. That's the fat that goes into your arteries, goes into your pancreas, goes into your liver, goes into your organs. Now, a lot of people, and I can't tell you how many times in the last 30 years my patients have said this. He goes, well, it's easy for you, you're Asian, right? And I said, they say that. I go, okay. He goes, Asians are all skinny. I go, okay. Have you ever seen sumo wrestlers? They're not exactly petite, right? You know, so, and one of the things about Asians is Asians have this thing called skinny fat. So I have less Asian patients up here in Alaska, but in California, these are Asian women that are maybe only 20 pounds overweight. They don't look big. They're just a little overweight, but they have full-blown diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Because Asians, the reason why you don't see a lot of big Asians is because we have very little subcutaneous fat stores. It's a genetic disadvantage. So when we just get a little big, we have full-blown diabetes and high blood pressure. So now you know. So if you see an Asian that's a little overweight, you're going to go, oh, that's too bad. All right. Okay, so why are we so good at making fat? I mean, why would we design a body that can throw cholesterol on the arteries? You know, why do we do that? Why are we so good at making fat? And it's because the answer is that early man, the average life expectancy was about 30, okay? And what did everyone die of? Not dinosaurs, starvation, starvation. Everyone died of starvation. You didn't make it through the winter. There were no great-grandkids and grandkids, right? I mean, you just didn't make it through the winter. So whatever one of our, ancestors could put fat on their body the most efficiently, they're the ones that got through the winter. And they got through the drought. And that's why we're all so good at making fat. We're really good at making stored energy. Now, type 2 diabetes, we talked about insulin. So there are 2 kinds of diabetes. One is type 1. And those are generally younger, like teenagers and young kids, where their pancreas gets wiped out and they can't make any more insulin. Now those kids have to take insulin, or they're going to die. They have to take insulin, right? There's a very famous case just a few weeks ago where it was a religious cult that it was a 9-year-old girl that had type 1 diabetes, and they stopped giving insulin and they prayed for her cure. And she died. So they're being tried for second-degree murder, I think, right? So these kids have to take insulin. The thing is, we used to, and type 2 diabetes has quadrupled in the last 30 years. Does anyone know, anyone in the hospital can say this, 30 years ago, how did we treat type 2 diabetes? You guys remember? Insulin. We gave insulin, right? So what happened was we treated the patient's blood sugar and killed the patient. Because what's happening is the reason why you get type 2 diabetes is your liver is full of fat and sugar. And so when you eat that cookie and that blood sugar goes up and it goes to the liver and knocks on the door, hello, hello, the liver says, no room at the inn. You can't come in. We don't have any space for any more glucose here. Stay out there in the bloodstream. So then your blood sugar goes up, right? So 30 years ago, we said, all right, what we need to do is give people more insulin, right? And so, yeah, the blood sugar went down, but their fatty liver got worse, their heart disease got worse. And with insulin, if you guys know people who took insulin, they all gained weight, right? And you would see people, and I think, Brian, you probably remember, we used to have people that took 50 units of NPH in the morning with 10 units of regular, in the morning, and then 40 in the evening. Just huge doses of insulin. And they just kept going up while their weight kept going up, and then they would die of some kind of metabolic syndrome, heart disease or something. So we were treating the blood sugar, and we don't do that anymore, okay? In fact, as you can see with the glucagon, We're actually doing just the opposite. So remember the 25% of the ingested carbohydrates goes to the liver, 75% of the muscle. Again, there's no room at the end. Sugar, you can't come in. We're too full. You got to go circulate around the bloodstream, all right? So there's something called set point. So unfortunately, the body remembers, and again, this is early man. We were all cavemen, right? It remembers the most you've ever weighed and will try to keep you there, okay? This is what happens, right? This is why people yo-yo, right? Because they lose weight, comes back up, lose weight, comes back up, because the brain is trying to get you back there. Because it doesn't care if you're 150, 250, or 450 pounds. If you go from 450 to 430, the brain says, you idiot, you're starving to death, okay? So that's how, that's, because we're, yes?
Is that what a plateau is too? I mean, I've done diets where I write every day and I'm religious and I'll sit at a weight for 3 weeks going.
Well, as you lose weight, your metabolism slows. I mean, that's what happens. So again, blame our early ancestors, because we all died of starvation when we were cavemen, and so that's why we can do this. So how can I lose weight? Well, again, like we said, try to reduce gasoline intake as much as possible, right? And this demonstration tonight was that you can actually have the dinner without bread, without rolls, without potatoes, without rice, without pasta, right? And then exercise. I literally exercise. The carrot at the end of the stick for me is that DQ peanut butter parfait, right? And so you can have, it doesn't mean you can never have carbs and you can never have sweets, but just know it's gas, so you got to burn it up, right? So GLP-1, these are the Ozempics, the Mounjaros, the Wegovy's, the Zepbound. What are the others? Trulicity, lots of them. So again, carbohydrate metabolism, making fats modulated by insulin. And again, we used to treat type 2 diabetes with insulin. Now we treat it with just the opposite, glucagon. Are there any side effects of these drugs? Oh boy, are there. Oh yeah, lots and lots of side effects, because it's a hormone, right? You're slowing the gut, you know. But you know, how much weight can people lose? So I personally, the woman that's lost the most weight, and it was with Mounjaro, was 75 pounds, right? And you know, her weight was originally like 230, and she was like 150 and I looked at her. I mean, she's like tall and thin, and I said, "Why are you on Mounjaro?" Right? I said, and she said, "Well, you didn't see me 6 months ago." And I said, "Well, how much weight have you lost?" She says, 75 pounds. Okay. Another guy on Ozempic, I have a man who's lost 120 pounds on Ozempic, right? Now, the curious thing is that there are people that don't lose weight on Ozempic. There are some people that lose modest amounts of weight, and there are people that lose huge amount of weight. And I think they're gonna, as we get more and more experience, the curious thing about my two patients is that they both had kind of like childhood traumas where, you know, the dad would be abusive and make them eat and all this kind of stuff. They had to finish their meal, and so they constantly had this voice in their head that says, eat cinnamon rolls, you know, go eat burgers, you know, go eat cakes, go eat candy, just go eat cookies. Just, they said this constant message, this constant voice that was always back there. And when they started the medication, the voice went away. So it's pretty, for me at least, that was pretty profound. I said, that's amazing. 75 and 120 pounds, right? And they just said, there's no signal. I don't have the need to stop, you know, at Save You More and get that cinnamon roll. Have any of you tried that cinnamon roll at Save You More? No. Should be illegal, right? Okay. You know, I'm generating business for Dairy Queen and Save You More here. So there are side effects. And recent data on heart disease, fatty liver diet, I mean, everything gets better with these GLP-1s. And you're going to see cancer risk go down, and will probably increase life expectancy, reduce the risk of cancers, many health benefits. But what happens when you stop these things? Yeah, a lot of people, that's what they're saying, right? And I think that it's going to be, there's so many, you don't have to get Ozempic now. I think there's like a aesthetic clinic that offers it. I mean, so you can go on like online and go on, all these websites and it's not the Ozempic, it's the whatever, generic semaglutide and generic tirzepatide. But I mean, I think the price is going to go down so low that almost everyone's going to, I mean, I don't know what it means to take this forever though, right? So, can we make our own GLP-1? You can. You can. So a ketogenic diet, low in carbs, has our body secrete glucagon. So we can make our own GLP-1 by eating a keto diet. Also soluble fiber. They're thinking like, psyllium, metamucil, those kinds of things. It may also encourage the production of GLP-1s. Exercise is beneficial. And also, I'm sure you guys have heard about intermittent fasting, right? So, and there are all sorts of versions of intermittent fasting. Shannon, we have those little handouts up there, right? So if you guys picked up that little handout, these are the 3 books that I would recommend you guys consider reading. And it is much more in depth and does a much better job of explaining it than I could in the session today. But they don't have a Ford F-150 reference in any of the books, just so you know. All right, so.
These are at the front desk on your way out.
Right. And these are 3 terrific books. So in summary, unfortunately, I'm not saying stop eating carbs, just stop eating so much of the good stuff. And if you're going to eat the good stuff, you got to burn it off. Or you're going to make diesel fuel. Exercise daily. When I did the walk with the doc, and people got the answer correct, I said, if I, as a physician, could only write one more prescription for the rest of my life for everyone, what would it be? And it would be exercise. Right. Consider the new medications. They do work. You don't have to even go to a doctor now. So, and it's a big lifestyle change. I understand not having bread with every meal. If you're Irish, not having potatoes with every meal. And kind of a good rule of thumb for everyone, what I tell people is, if your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize what you're eating, you probably shouldn't eat it. Because your great-grandmother didn't have super big gulps. They didn't have Hostess Ho-Hos, right? They didn't have these things, right? And so if your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize it, then you should probably avoid it. And that's the final slide, and now we're open for questions. Did that make sense, or was that, what's that? All right. See, I was just hoping someone would ask that question, right? I was really hoping so, and I didn't put it there because I was hoping someone, so thanks for bringing that up, right? So, I have a lot of people that say, but I can drink as much Diet Coke as I want, right? Because there are no calories, 0 calories, all these diet drinks. What we know is that if you drink a Diet Coke and compare it to drinking a regular Coke, the Diet Coke causes a higher insulin spike than the regular Coke, okay? So there are no calories involved, right? You're not getting sugar, but you are flipping the balance to insulin, which is the fat-building, hunger, get hungrier, and that's, and so that's going to make you eat more, right? And it'll flip it to the insulin side. And with insulin, it's kind of paradoxical. You think about it. I mean, why would eating sugar? Why should that make me hungrier, right? But it makes sense when we were cavemen because blueberries didn't, we can't go to Safeway and buy blueberries year round. And if we were cavemen, blueberries would only be out there for like 3 weeks, right? So as you eat that first blueberry, you want to get hungry. You want to eat that whole patch of blueberries to store that fat for the winter before the bears get to it, right? And that's why when you get that pint of, ice cream and you're going to go, but I'm going to discipline myself with this ice cream, all right? I'm just going to eat a little bit for the next 2 weeks. You take it out, you say, I'm just going to have 2 scoops of this ice cream. You put it back in the freezer, and like 2 minutes later you go, Okay, maybe I can have 2 more scoops, right? Then you go back and have 2 or 3 more. And then 45 minutes later, you've got an empty 1-pint container of ice cream, and you feel guilty. Go, I have no self-control. This is terrible. Well, sugar stimulates insulin, which stimulates your appetite. So that's what's supposed to happen, right? So the key is not to get there in the first place, right? So, yes, yes, Kim. So she's asking about intermittent fasting, and it's so the best intermittent fasting book is the Diabetes Code, but everybody talks about it. The first book, Lies I Taught in Medical School, talks about it. Dr. Attia talks about it. Intermittent fasting is if you're starving, if you're not eating, you turn on your glucagon, and so you're turning on the fat burning up part of the equation. You're turning off insulin, turning on glucagon, right? And for intermittent fasting, so Dr. Lufkin, the one he uses is that he skips breakfast, he eats lunch, and then he eats dinner about, I think, 5.5 hours later. So he's basically fasting for 18 hours, okay? Dr. Fung, in the second book, he encourages a 36-hour fast. And what that is so after dinner tonight, okay, so tonight is Thursday, all day Friday, you would just be drinking tea, black coffee, bone broth, chicken broth, lots of water. And then your first meal is Saturday breakfast. So that's a 36-hour fast, right? So the longer you can go, the better. But, but Dr. Attia, the third book, says nobody should fast for 36 hours because if you fast that long, you're going to start breaking down protein, right? So there are a lot of opinions on this, but basically what you're doing is you're turning on glucagon and you're turning off insulin by fasting. You're going to be shocked, Kim. There are people in the book who do it 2 to 3 times a week. But those are the ones he talks about in the book. Because I mean, they weighed 400 pounds and had like horrible diabetes, and now they're 170 pounds and running triathlons or something. So I mean, okay, that's an exaggeration. It's not really in the book. But there are people who did it up to 2 to 3 times a week.
Even after the weight loss, they just continue.
We have a lot of people that do that. We have staff, as you know, that do the 36-hour fast, so, and it's basically, but now you know the physiology, because I think you see all this stuff on Ozempic and diabetes, and no one really tells it to you this way. You're basically going this way. You're flipping this way, all right? All right, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to have breakfast. I'm going to go eat a pile of pancakes. Flip this way, okay? Okay, that's too many pancakes. Okay, I'm just going to eat keto. Flip the other way. So the body flips back and forth, right? So. Yes? That's the set point. Well, I mean, you have to, I mean, you have to go full glucagon, keto, and tons of exercise. But as I showed you, exercise is not so easy. I mean, it's 22 pounds of fat. So if you gain 40, so that's almost 150,000 calories, right? Yes, well, 150,000 calories, and a marathon, you only spend 2,800. So that's why it's difficult. So the body wants to get you back. So it'll slow the metabolism. So it's going to be fasting. It's going to be having almost no carbs, full keto. Your carbs will be from vegetables and like low sugar fruits. Yes, absolutely. And the other thing is, so a number of us here are from Iowa, and so, when I told you about Asians being skinny fat, they look thin, but they're fat because they have diabetes and high cholesterol, high blood pressure. When I do this, there's a bike ride across Iowa. Have you heard of it? Called Ragbri. It's a bicycle ride across the state of Iowa, right? And I'm always amazed when I do this. I've done it quite a few times. When there'll be so everybody thinks Iowa is flat. Okay, so the people who do the routes make sure that they hit every hill, whether it's the northern, middle, or they just hit every steep hill in the entire state, just to show all these New Yorkers and Californians, hey, we're not flat, okay? And some of these hills are like 5.5-mile grades going uphill. And, you know, I'm all of 150 pounds and I'm struggling to get up these hills. And I see people that weigh 80 pounds more than me who are going up the hill without a problem, right? And so you don't have to be skinny, right? And these people are big, but they're super strong and super fit and super healthy, right? And so, you know, and I'm always amazed because I think to myself, you know, you're such a sissy. If you put an 80-pound backpack on, I doubt you could make it up this hill, and I probably couldn't, right? I probably couldn't. And, you know, one of my friends who had gastric bypass, what they told her and what they told everyone in the class is they said, listen, when you lose all this weight, you're going to be so strong because your leg muscles have been holding up 350 pounds for years, but you got to use it. You have to use the muscle as you're losing the weight. And then they even did equivalents. Like I remember she told me that, okay, so you want to eat a cookie, and a cookie is 120 calories, okay? Well, a 100-yard dash is 10 calories. So you're going to do 1,200-yard dashes. You want to burn the cookie, that's what you got to do, right? So she was taught that, and I thought that was a great thing that she learned. You know, yes. So her question was, if you have a fatty liver and you lose weight, does the damage go away? And I guess the answer is always complicated. It depends. So if your fatty liver push you to the point of cirrhosis, and it's what we call F3, F4 cirrhosis, it's probably not that reversible. But if before you get to cirrhosis, if you're F0, F1, F2 fatty liver, or even F2, F3, then it's probably reversible. And what's sad is that the number one reason for liver transplant in the country has been hepatitis C for the last 30 years. That's no longer true because we've cured hepatitis C, so now it's fatty liver, right? So, yes. You know Luther Vandross, the singer, remember? That's what he did, and he died of a stroke. So it's not very healthy, right? So, but if you understand the physiology and the strategy, you know, and again, that's why I don't like Atkins, because, you know, your weight just peels off. But, you know, I mean, who can eat bacon and pork rinds all day, right? I could, yeah, maybe, yeah, okay, maybe. Okay. All right, so there's a question in the back. Well, there are more, so, you know, this is, he says quinoa protein or carb. I think it's a complex carb. Quinoa is a very interesting story, but I won't go into that. But so complex carbs are okay. I mean, you're not going to go zero carbs, but if you can avoid getting the carbs via Twinkie or a Ho-Ho or, you know, Oreos, that's better, right? Complex carbs are better because they're slower absorbed. A carb is still a carb, right? But these books are going to be much better at explaining these things than I am. And they have all the foods, and there are a million websites on this stuff that you can look up. You know, they call the glycemic index and how much your sugar will spike, and all that's available online. The question, yes? It does change by the week, right? No, it does. So, I mean, yeah, it does change by the week. It's good, bad, good, bad, good, bad for the last 40 years. I don't know. I mean, I drink coffee. I like caffeine. So I don't think it's going to make me live longer or shorter, I don't think. But, you know, so, yeah. But this is the thing about data is it goes both ways, right? And it's just like, you know, when I talked about that rabbit study, it's just amazing one animal study of feeding bratwurst to rabbits could so profoundly change the way we eat in the United States. It's just, it's amazing, right? So there's a question in the back. Yes. Yeah, I don't think this is the venue for me to give prescriptive advice on how people can lose weight, but well, it's, so no, I'm really a gastroenterologist. I think I'm kind of a colonoscopy guy, you know, not really a liver guy too, not really you know, they had slim pickings, so that's why I was picked to give this talk. So I guess they just want a country boy from Iowa to talk about it. But when you talk about when you were a runner, okay, so did you ever see when Michael Phelps, they actually did a calorie count when he was training for the Olympics, right? His caloric intake was over 10,000 calories a day, right? And when you were running 10 to 20 miles a day, you could eat 10,000 calories of carbs. Now, what's interesting is, like, so here's a question. Now, NFL football players, they're huge people, okay? Who thinks that the average life expectancy of an NFL player is shorter than the general population? Most of you said it. It's actually longer, okay? And the reason why NFL players live longer is exactly, they lived what you lived, which is running 20 miles a day. They played competitive football. But now they are absolutely coached on diet and exercise. And they're calorie counting, they have chefs, they have cooks. So they know when they retire from the NFL that their caloric intake has to go down by 80%. And they do it on purpose.
But how do you get off of that? Like I said, to me, it feels like an addiction to carbs and sugar. Like
I think a lot of us have addiction to carbs and sugar. So one of the things is the GLP-1s. So my two patients that lost 75 and 120 pounds, they also had that addiction, that voice talking to them. And when they started it, it stopped. So, but it's not for everybody. I'm sure you've heard that now they said that Ozempic helps with alcoholism because it takes away the drive for alcohol as well. So that's, you're gonna see more and more. There's a question in the back. I know you've been waiting. Sorry about that. Yeah, they're very similar. I think there are people here who could describe them better, but it's GLP-1/GIP, like Mounjaro. It's supposed to be even more potent, and when they did basically physiologically it works very similar, but when they did Mounjaro versus Ozempic, Mounjaro actually beat Ozempic. So the little extra other kind of glucagon seems to help as well. So, yes? So her question was, it is. That's pregnancy's not, that doesn't count. That doesn't, yeah, that doesn't count. Right. So she said, does your set point ever change? Please say yes. Okay. And I'm not the expert on this, but I remember reading something 25 years ago where there's something that, there's when we eat and we're at our set weight, we have a little temperature spike afterwards, after eating a lunch. It's like just a little baby temperature spike, which is basically saying, use up what you ate, right? Now, when people lose weight, they lose that temperature spike, okay? So this one study, they looked at people who'd had gastric bypass, who lost like half their weight, and they checked 10 years later to see if they got the spike back. They didn't, sorry. That's just one study though, so, right? But it looks like the brain has a good memory. Yes, you all the way in the back? So I have a primary doctor here, Dr. Wasson, and I also see a longevity doctor here, Dr. Robert Letta. Do you guys know Bob Letta? So he's Cengenics, so he does all this longevity stuff with me. And what's always amazing, and what with Peter Attia and Bob Letta and Cengenics, all these people, is it's shocking how much protein they're telling me to eat, right? And so they're just basically saying you can't get enough protein. And I thought I ate a lot of protein, but I'm short of what they're recommending I eat. So they apparently more protein the better, unless you have certain kidney conditions when you're not supposed to eat protein, right? So it's not for everybody. So, yes? So the question was, does it matter when you have your dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? So he's almost like a plant, so if you want to see how to gain weight, when I talked about sumo wrestlers, they have perfected the art of gaining weight. They're 400 or 500 pounds, okay? Have you guys ever seen what they eat? Okay, so they don't eat ribeyes, okay? And they don't eat sushi, right? So their lunch is a giant bowl of Japanese noodles with meat and vegetables and 8 to 10 bowls of white rice. Wow. And then they eat their dinner very late at night. So they'll eat, again, a giant bowl of Japanese noodles with meat and vegetables, 8 to 10 bowls of white rice, with beer and sake. And then they go to sleep, right? So they are piling that premium gasoline as much as they can, and then quickly going to sleep to do diesel fuel production. They're like a refinery, a diesel refinery, right? And that's how you get as big as possible. So you want to do the opposite. You know, you don't want to do a big carb load late at night and go to sleep. So, and then there were earlier studies that said you should eat I'm sure you've read that you're supposed to eat 4 to 5 times a day. Then some people said 4 times a day, 3 times a day. And then Dr. Lufkin eats twice a day. So the answer is, I don't know. Yes? So this is, her question is, it's a great question. So if you're a vegetarian, you're a plant-based diet, how do you get enough protein? This is really, you should talk to nutritionists, but as long as you get the 11 essential amino acids, and that's why you can't just eat corn, because you're gonna be missing out on one of the amino acids, and you're not gonna be able to build protein. So that's why you can be a vegetarian, but you have to make sure you get all the essential 11 amino acids. So you can't just eat what you want. And then people go, I'm a vegetarian and I can't lose weight. You know, I've heard that a lot, and I tell people, well, you know, a hippopotamus is vegetarian. You know, an elephant is a vegetarian, and cattle are vegetarians. You know, and so unfortunately, you can't be a vegetarian and be small. You know, I mean, but as long as you get your essential amino acids, and there's so many good apps online that you can see which foods, because if you just eat one thing, then you're not going to make it, right? And you know, I was in Machu Picchu in Peru, and I don't know if you've been there. And so the people, the royalty who live there, live to 100. Okay, the people feeding them all the barley and millet, they live to 30. This is the time of Machu Picchu, right? And it's because the farmers, all they ate was barley, or all they ate was millet. All they ate was what they grew. So they were severely protein malnourished and died at 30. The people up there, they ate all the contributions of all the grain that went up there, plus they ate the alpacas and the llamas, right? So they lived to 100, right? And so I think that if you're thoughtful about that you can't just eat one thing, that you have to make sure that you're going to be able to protein build. You don't have to eat meat to get protein, but you have to be thoughtful about getting your essential amino acids, right? Oh, it is. I mean, so, you know, you'll see a lot of people who are alcoholics, and they can stop alcohol, but then they eat candy, because it's the same pleasure center in the brain, right?
And I've noticed for me, because I get very addicted to sugar, like you just kind of get obsessed. It takes
I'll see you at Dairy Queen, Kim.
I know, right? But I found that it takes about 2 weeks, and then I really don't have that addiction. I mean, I don't know if it's really
well, I don't think it's an addiction. I think that, you know, I mean, you think about, you know, the primitive brain. You know, we are driven to look for salt and sweet, right? I mean, that's what you're supposed to like. You know, if somebody goes, oh, I don't like anything sweet, but they didn't make it through the winter, right? So, you know, so, yes, all the way in the back. Don't believe it. Everything you read online is not necessarily true. In fact, it may not be true. But I can tell you, I have patients that have reflux and they take apple cider vinegar. It doesn't really make sense because, you know, reflux is caused by acid and it's more acid, but they feel better. So I said, go for it. You know, it's not going to hurt anything, right? So, you know. It is. Okay. Yeah. It's upside down. It's upside down. Yes. Yeah. Now it's a upside down triangle. No, but basically it's. But there are still people who they still say you need to get your 80 grams of carbs in. And you'll see dietitians who will say you should get 80 grams of carbs in, right? 90 grams of carbs. I mean, there's still discourse, but you know, whenever there's any like major breakthrough in medicine, like we discover something that's shockingly curative of something, You know roughly how long it takes before we have widespread implementation in this country? You know how long it is? 15 years. 15 years. We knew aspirin, was good for heart disease. It took 15 years before everybody started using it, right? So there's still disagreements, yes. Okay, so again, like I said, there's a 15-year delay from a major breakthrough to widespread implementation. So the first person in the book is Dr. Robert Lefkin, and he was a radiologist I knew him at UCLA before he was famous, a radiologist at UCLA. So his mother was a hospital dietitian, okay? And he grew up closely following what his mother told him to eat. And so that's what he ate: grains, cereals, pasta, not much red meat, no bacon, all those kinds of things like that, right? And then when in the book, I think he was like 50 or something, and on his physical, it was terrible. I mean, his cholesterol was up, his blood pressure was up, his hemoglobin A1C, and he said, how can this be that I followed exactly the diet that my mother, the hospital nutritionist, told me, and I'm getting sicker? But beliefs change, and that's different. So, so your nutritionist is part of more old school. So I am new school, but people disagree, right? And it takes a long time to do a sea change and have everyone change. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why we're having this dinner here, so you guys can see it, right? I mean, I had a patient recently, same thing, and he has got diabetes and saw a nutritionist, and they said, eat 100 grams of carbs. He goes, man, I can't get 100 grams of carbs. I said, who told you to do that? And he goes, I shouldn't? I said, no. So he's reading the lies I taught in medical school, and I said, no, don't do that. And they go, well, why was I told that? I said, well, people disagree, right? I mean, just look at COVID, look at vaccine versus anti-vaxxers. I mean, there are a lot of opinions, right? A lot of people disagreed. And, in medicine, they say, if you put a doctor in a room by himself, he will argue with himself. Okay? And any question like this, you put 5 doctors together, you'll get 5 different opinions. So it's not universal, right? So, yes. So someone recently said, well, everything in moderation. I said, not really, because if you do bread and potatoes in moderation and you're heavy, you won't get any thinner, right? So I think that if you could have your carbs from, or anyone here could get carbs from vegetables and low sugar fruits, and just not eat pasta, not eat bread, not eat potatoes, just intentionally not eat cakes and sweets and pies, intentionally avoid that save you more cinnamon roll, right? Just intentionally avoid these things, then that will flip the balance to glucagon. I don't think there's a set number, and it's also your activity level, right? Like I said, Michael Phelps was, he was drinking Gatorade and eating candy and doing 10,000 calories a day, right? So I don't, and I think you can see online and you can talk to nutritionists, but again, your nutritionist may tell you something completely different, right? And I remember 30 years ago when I was the VPMA at PIH Health, and I wrote an article about this 30 years ago, and I said, don't eat anything white, except white meat, chicken, and fish, I said, or pork, right? I said, don't eat anything white. And literally, the dietitian 30 years ago, we would do point counterpoint every month, and I never got her a change. She was the head dietitian. She said, you are wrong. Complex carbs are good. You are wrong. You have to eat whole wheat bread. You are wrong. And I would say, no, you are wrong, right? You don't have to eat these things. And now, 35 years later, I think that more people are on my side. So, the less the better. Deb, I can't tell you a number, and the danger of seeing a dietitian is you may get the wrong information, right? So, yeah, yes. So I think the one I put first, Lies I Taught in Medical School, is probably the easiest to read, right? It's not as long as some of the others, and it kind of explains things, right? The diabetes code also says it. But if you can actually go to ChatGPT and say, how many calories do I get from different forms? It'll just go, it'll give you, marathon is 2,800 calories. 2 hours of cutting logs is sorry. I think, yeah, lecture's over, my battery ran out. Okay, all right. Sorry about that. No, so, but 2 hours, I kind of remember looking at things. So I know 2 hours of heavy cutting logs is 1,000 calories. 2 hours of heavy yard work is 1,000 calories. 100-yard dash is 10 calories. Marathon is 2,800 calories. So you can just look it up on, like, ChatGPT will tell you what it is to help with that. But that's the best way. All right, are we all through here? Does everyone get all their questions in? We're going to finish early. I want to thank everyone for listening to this country boy from Iowa talk about his opinions on weight loss. Okay, what's that? All right.
I knew this was going to be good because I've met Dr. Kim several times, and I knew he was going to be able to entertain the room. I'm curious how many of you still like him after this. Yeah.
Okay. At least they're not going to tar and feather me, so I'm good.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. Can we give him one more round of applause?
All right. Thanks, Shannon.